Welcome back, everybody, to LARPs and TARPs. I hope you've had a wonderful break and you've not been too impatient waiting for us to return. I am your host, Morgan, and I am joined by your other host, Tom.
Hello, and I'm sure they've been dreading our return. It's been the best 2 months since we've been gone.
They refreshed their feed this morning and they saw our logo come up and oh, fuck.
They're back.
Not again. And this week we are talking about, we talk about the recent LARP we went to, the Feast Your Eyes event, and Now My Watch Begins that we were attending.
Now does it begin?
Week. Sorry?
Does it begin now?
Correct. Immediately. Right. That's just spoilers actually. We've are lucky enough to be talking to two of the writers from that game. So we are joined this week by Pascal. Would you like to give yourself an introduction? I'll say hello to the lovely listeners.
I'm Pascal. I'm an award-winning LARP producer, and got to drop that in every time. In the real world, I'm a video game producer as well.
Oh,
so I'm all about production.
Awesome, perfect. And Sean as well.
Hi, I'm Sean. I am brand new to the writing team at Feast Your Eyes. And outside of LARP, I'm a dentist/voice actor.
Ooh.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool. Well, thank you very much for coming in, guys. First at the top, obviously, we had a fantastic weekend.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you very much for all the fun you provided.
My first question, how did you get the weather so perfect for it?
What do you mean?
There was
no ice, there was no snow.
Warm.
It was double digits in temperature.
I spent 3 weeks, right, going to Brighton every day in -6 degrees, thinking like, great, this is going to be perfect. And then the week of the event, it gets up to like 12 degrees. What the hell is this? Like, everyone's got all their cold weather gear ready.
Taking off layers because they're just sweating.
There's one event
Cold
where
sweat.
LARPers have adequate cold weather gear, right? And then it's warm as hell. Yeah.
It was terrible. I spent so much time, but I bought nearly 20 meters of wool, like making stuff. And then we got to the event. I was like, wow, okay, it is hot. I can't wear the fancy cloak that I spent ages making.
I just suffered.
Fair play
through
to a lot of the players. They did keep on their furs and cloaks, and I was like, fair play to you. You must be dripping underneath there. But I think they felt good.
Yeah, I was toppling towards exhaustion. I was like, this needs to get off. But yeah, no, absolutely awesome.
All for the aesthetic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
I gotta say, like on that Saturday morning, coming into the fort when doing like the training montage.
Oh,
everyone kitted up in their black kit just looked absolutely sublime.
It looked as we imagined it.
Yeah, exactly.
And more.
I was so glad it did, because it definitely felt amazing, like, for us. And I know the difference, I guess, between like when you're running a game and playing a game. I guess it's easy to be immersed when you're playing it, but I'm glad you as a runners came in and you're like, this looks as we wanted. Because I definitely think the players knocked it out of the park.
What really surprised me was how many variations LARPers come up with just a black kit. No one matched, and it seemed fantastic. There was no just strict uniform. Yeah. Everyone had its own personality, looked worn in, just completely fantastic.
Yeah, there was some brief bits in the kit guide about like the cut of your kit might have like regional variations depending on the status of your character. Like if your kit was like funded from back home instead of being, whatever was left over in the stores. And we really lucky we had such a dedicated player base that actually some of them really leaned into it very hard. In particular, like just to pluck some examples, Bethany, who was playing Kyra, like her kit was off the rails.
Oh, it really looked like a veteran sort of steward healer that she has been, at the wall for 10, 15 years. She's made sure her kit looks like she has been wearing it for 10, 15 years, which her character has been, kind of thing.
It's really funny.
She should be comfortable. Whereas some of the others who have just been dragged off a boat, their kit looked a little bit more ragged, like it had been taken from the bottom of the stores and just handed it to the conscript.
Yeah.
You know, some of them have definitely like been rolling around in mud and gravel to get that weathered, you know, crap looking. You've just been handed this now. You know, look at it. And then you've got some of the nobles who have volunteered, who are in absolutely immaculate kit that looks like it's straight off the rack kind of thing. You know, daddy's bought them something so they'll look good. Silas Winch. I think he came in and someone said, "Oh, have you been here? Are you one of the veterans?" And he was like, "No, Daddy bought me this."
We got a good video from one of the players as well. Isaac, who played Joran Pike. And he was like, "Oh, just out taking my dog for a walk," and he just had his cloak like on a rope behind him as he was walking around the roads outside of Eversley. Just getting that weathering set in.
Excellent, that's so good. I think it might be good to give a bit of context, I guess, to what the wider story was for the game. So I can't remember the precise year, but the basic premise of the game was we were all, for some reason or another, as we've hinted, either volunteered or conscripted onto the wall and to join the Night's Watch. And the game took place very shortly after Robert's Rebellion had just finished, if I'm correct. Was it like a matter of weeks, matter of months? How close did you set it, do you think?
The exact time scale is at the start of the game. It is a few weeks since Tywin took King's Landing.
Sure, okay.
And Robert sat on the throne. So a few of the players were conscripts who Tywin sent to the wall. So that's the same kind of wave of conscription as Alistair Thorne, because he was also on. We were toying with the idea of having him as an NPC on Friday night, as another kind of disgruntled noble conscript who was given the choice.
But in the end, we didn't want any named from the book, just to make it our story, rather than all of the players sort of focusing in on that NPC.
Yeah.
I quite liked how that all worked out, and I think that it kind of shows you a little bit like, again, the people we see in the show are like a handful of people. There's other stuff going on. There's other rangings. And also, obviously, LARPers can do whatever they want, and if someone killed Alistair Thorne...
The cannon!
Yeah.
No.
What does that mean for the wider story? Which would be really cool. I mean, what kind of inspired you to pick, I suppose, the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire, and also this particular period? Because obviously you've got all of Westeros' history. What was the kind of inspiration between?
I think the Night's Watch specifically started at that picnic table in Eversley during a crew. We were just sort of chilling out, and we were talking about a Night's Watch LARP and how cool that'd be. Because we all had, especially us from Highguard, we had a lot of black kit already, and then we were just sort of thinking, oh yeah, that'd be cool. You know, it writes itself. And
it was James's idea originally, but he wanted to run a very different game. Like, he kind of pitched it, and then the months went by, and James and myself, and then Sean as well to some degree, although less since you've had a kid. We play A Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. So we're kind of continually exposed to the setting through that, and just being like, oh, these characters are really cool, like, and just playing the game.
I specifically play Night's Watch because they're the best.
Yeah. They just got a big.
They do have the drip.
Makes me very happy.
Yeah.
And Sean's like painted Night's Watch minis are fucking inspirational. They're absolutely great. And we actually took a lot of inspiration for the kit brief from the miniatures and from the artwork around the miniatures
nice.
game.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some really good artwork in the miniatures game.
Yeah.
That it did the kit brief almost for us.
A lot of the example kits are kind of our best efforts at recreating the artwork from the cards.
Sure. I mean, I think it came across fantastically. I mean, when the First of all, when we saw, I know we both like this. When we saw the name of the game that was coming out, we were both super excited.
The trailer did help a lot. You did a great job with the trailer.
That trailer was an absolute fever dream pitch that came up within 24 hours. I was on my honeymoon with my wife and baby at the time. And then I was getting messages from James because it was during the writer's strike. So my wife works in film, James works in film, and obviously they're not working. And they were like, hey, why don't we just do a trailer for this? And I asked my wife if she'd edit it, because she's a film editor. And she was like, yeah, that sounds really fun. And then James sort of wrote a quick sort of sketch of what to do. My wife looked at it and said, you're never going to be able to do this in an afternoon. And she was right. But we got the shots that we needed. He thought we'd be done in 2 hours. It took more like 6. But absolute credit to everyone on that film crew. We worked really hard. Shout out to Nat and Nick doing the camera operating for coming in there, and then all of the crew. There's too many of them to like shout out individually, but they know who they are. Who volunteered their time to just act as sort of wildlings and Night's Watch for it, and it's a shout out to my wife Laura for editing everything together and making it actually sound decent.
The mad thing is, like, we went from concept to released
production
trailer
probably like
6 days.
Yeah.
Oh, that's insane.
It would have been quicker if I wasn't in Mexico at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got back from Mexico. I think we had a day off, and then we went to Eversley, shot it all, and then Laura edited it in about 2 days, and I did the voiceover for it.
It's true dedication to the hobby.
It looked absolutely fantastic. And again,
I think as well, if the hype wasn't big for that game before that trailer came out,
I was just going to say that
the hype afterwards was insane. I don't think I've ever seen a game get hyped from a little too suddenly.
How quickly did the tickets sell out in the end? Because I know it was very
3
quick.
minutes.
3 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, which is the same as Flying Lead, basically.
We deliberately announced it on the Tuesday before Empire, the 4th Empire event. Thursday night, I was just bombarded with questions. I also announced in that same week the project that I've been working on at work, which is very exciting. It's Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2.
Which I'd guessed 2 years ago, but he refused to say yes or no. He's like, no, I'm definitely not working on that.
And so I just spent the whole Thursday evening just being absolutely drowned in questions. It was great. I loved it. But from minute one, from the first Facebook post we made about it, we could see that we're not the only massive nerds super excited to bring the Night's Watch to life.
Because it was always going to be difficult to sell a January LARP. No one, especially an outside January LARP, no one wants to run around in the cold.
Apparently not too cold.
Well, yeah, I know. But so we never expected a sellout like that. I think we expected to sell a lot of tickets.
Yeah.
And it would be over a period of it wouldn't go all at once. It would be a few over days. You'd have that initial rush, and then you'd get the dribs and drabs over the next sort of 2 months. The fact that it sold out so quickly, and not just sold out, we had our waiting list was enough to do another game.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was. I'm not shocked, honestly. I think that
even on the crew side, we had 175% sign up for crew. So if you're listening to this and you're mad that you didn't get to crew, don't worry. A lot of people didn't either. We had people messaging us on the day being if there's any dropouts, then we can come along and help out. which is
we did have a few dropouts over the course, but they just got slotted in with the waiting list immediately.
Yeah.
Like there was a net zero dropout of that game. We had 100% crew and 100% players.
No one dropped out on the day as well. And that's the first time I can remember, like, no players, no crew drops out on the day itself.
Yeah.
We had, I know that when we were doing the ticket sales, me and Tom were both sat at our laptops, and then I had open in a separate tab a pre-written email to Feast Your Eyes asking to go on the wait list. So the second that I did get a ticket, I could slam to get on the wait list.
To be fair, we do that with every game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of LARP, Feast Your Eyes, or any game being run by Kitty and Johnny.
Yeah.
Like they're hitting that point where it's kind of suffering from success almost.
They've been in the game so long now and proved time after time that they can put on an incredible weekend.
Yeah.
That it's not surprising really.
Yeah, but as we say here at Laps and Tarps, don't bother going.
It's terrible.
It's awful.
We will suffer through it, so you don't have to.
We go to review it for everyone else, so do not bother.
Very good.
But yeah.
I just want to spin back onto the point about the chronology of the game as well. So the fact that we chose to set it in 284 AC, so the 284th year after Aegon's conquest, when at that point when Robert Baratheon usurps the Targaryen throne and takes the Seven Kingdoms for himself, because it's like a defined event that anyone familiar with the setting is familiar with, right? Like you can't watch Game of Thrones or read the Song of Ice and Fire books without understanding what went down there. It also gave us a great divide, like a great point of conflict to give the players. 'Cause nothing generates like good role playing, like immediately like, oh, hey, I'm this guy. I fought on the side of like the Targaryen king and I would die for Prince Rhaegar, and then someone else being like, well, the Targaryens hanged my family because we stole a loaf of bread, and it's like, okay, great, now you hate each other, have fun. So that was one of the big like divides. It also meant that because there was like a recent war, we'd set up characters, and like this is one of the things about writing it as well. So we wrote all of these characters. I don't think that's been mentioned yet, but we pre-wrote all of these characters, and that was a lot of work in and of itself. But I think it really paid off because it meant that then we could have these setups where people had fought on different sides of the same battle, and now they find themselves leagues beyond the wall, having to rely on each other to survive, and that's something that like we did witness kind of come into fruition a few times, but and we've heard stories coming out of it which have been really
so many
really
stories
great.
that we didn't even know about was going on, which we'll probably never find out all of those little stories that have happened, but those LARPers who it happened to, I think has it'll really sort of sit with them for a while.
I think I did really enjoy. I think Tom was saying you wanted to ask a little bit more about why you wrote the characters and stuff, but I think something I did really enjoy was seeing the little connections between my character and other people that we were put in there, and I did really enjoy it as kind of like a jumping off point, because I've played in one other game with pre-written characters before, and it was the same thing. It's really nice to know who you should be interacting with. And again, as someone who's vaguely familiar with the setting, but also like I know a fair amount. I think I know more than your average person, but there's still stuff I didn't know, and I quite enjoyed just being my character. We'll go into this more detail now, kind of like when we go over the event. But my character was just a small folk who was kind of like vaguely aware of like the Lords of the North and kind of who was king, but beyond that wasn't as bothered by everything. It was quite fun to kind of like see all these people and like had a big thing of like, yeah, cool, you're all lords now. We're all the same at this point in the wall. It was quite fun to kind of have that relationship.
Before we delve any deeper, I do just want to raise that there is a chance that we'll run this same game again with the same set of characters. So in case anyone listening is like, spoiler conscious and is intending to maybe play if we do run it again, that's a big if at the moment as well.
Big if, yeah.
We haven't set anything in stone. But if we do run it again, it will be at the same time point and with probably about 80% the same set of characters, if not all of them.
Yeah, there'll probably be a little bit of, wiggle
Shifting.
room with characters, but yeah,
I will
the lion's
say,
work is been done already.
Yeah, I will say I've played one other game with pre-written characters before called Three Kingdoms, and they've done that 3 times. I think they're looking to do a 4th run with the same characters every time. And the way they do it is that every single character sheet is public, so you can look at everyone's character sheet. And I think if you go into the game kind of with that fit frame of mind and be like aware of what you know and what you don't know, it allows you to tell really fun stories anyway. Like, I know some people want to be a bit spoiler conscious and don't know what's going on, but I do really enjoy that aspect of, like, let's say I know a character and I know what their motivations are and how they act, and how that provides an opportunity for me to be like, oh, well, I know what kind of story we can play off and kind of what interactions we'll do. And it's also fun to see what other people bring to a character. So I brought my character in with, he'd been wronged by someone, and you could say after the years since he's mellowed and he's less angry about the whole situation, but I was like, no, he'd be even more intense. And I think it'd be really cool to see where different people fall on like a rerun and how those characters come out in different ways. Would be really interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the big incentives for running it again, is seeing what would other people do in Silas Winch's shoes, like, and we ended each of the character briefings with a series of prompts that can be answered like however you want. And like some people filled them in on the Google Doc and sent them through. Some people just like went through and answered them like in their own heads. There was no obligation to do it like any of that at all, but it was just then a way for us to say like, okay, and now this character is yours, and use these points to define like who they are as a person, from like this grim and horrible history that we've written you.
Yeah, we tried to write them in a way that is a sort of a history of what they are, rather than we weren't telling them how they feel.
Yeah.
It was, these events have happened to you, now you run with it. How is this going to make you sad, angry, indifferent? That's up to you as the actor, the LARPer, to role play out over the weekend.
Yeah.
Were there any particularly big challenges to writing so many pre-made characters? And do you think it was worth it with the final product to do such a thing?
It was definitely worth
Yes,
it.
100%.
100%. When did we actually start writing? Was it October? Yeah, it must have been, because I think it was after I got back from Mexico.
Yeah, it was after the trailer. So I'd written some example characters to be like, this is what you could expect. And then it was, if you have a ticket, submit this form. And we waited for most of them to be submitted before starting.
Yeah, that was right.
So I think we started around mid to late October. We sent out the last one. Well, so we sent out the last of the first, like the original sign-up batch, maybe 2 weeks into December. But we ended up writing about 14, 15 each. I think Kitty wrote a few more.
Kitty wrote our characters, yeah.
Some spares. We had some people drop out and they had a very specific character that we didn't want to like give to someone else, kind of out of the blue.
Also, sometimes you'd wake up and you'd see that 3 characters had been written, and Kitty had been up at 4 a.m. Just writing, and she's like, "Oh, sorry guys, I got an idea." And so
there was so many times of like where I'd sit down, I'd be like, right, I've got this idea in my head. I know exactly who this person is. I'm just gonna bash it out. 30 minutes, we're done. And then suddenly it's 2:30 in the morning. I've got 18 wiki pages open, and I'm desperately trying to find out who this guy's uncle was at the time. Yeah, it's
the nobles.
yeah.
I think took me the longest because the nobles I had to make sure made sense in the history.
Yeah.
Because like I wrote Balin Glover character, and it was very like intricate how it fitted in because his brother or nephew was at the Tower of Joy, and it had to all sort of make sense.
Sure.
That in the sort of the chronology. Otherwise, it would just ruin immersion. You'd be like, oh no, that's not what's in the books.
Yeah. Sure.
Whereas the small folk and the middle class characters, you could be a lot more. You can make up a lot more stuff. So as long as you know the general sort of what's going on in that region, you can create whatever you want. And some of those were actually some of my favorite to write because you could you had a lot more creative freedom.
Yeah,
Actually, no, that's a lie. I loved writing all of mine, the nobles included.
You still have all of the solid setting that they're in. Like, you know the world that they're in, but yeah, you don't have the same kind of constraints.
You don't have to go the amount of family trees I scoured. It got silly at one point. I was like, oh, do I really? Like, I know so much about the Clegane story, more than I knew even after like reading the books and watching the shows. Like, I know that family now very, very intricately.
Yeah.
If you want a history of the Iron Islands from 370 to 384 AC, I'm your guy. All right, yeah.
It's going to be a pub
I don't even like
quiz
the
question.
Yeah.
Well, you did an absolutely fantastic job. Everyone's characters were so rich, and I think everyone brought them to life spectacularly.
Yeah,
I hated
big
Winch
part
so
of
much.
that. Like, we couldn't say, like, we couldn't celebrate these characters so much without the people that did bring them to life and embody them so well. And we all had like multiple moments over the weekend where we look at someone like role playing when we're just reffing or whatever, and we're just like, okay, that is like the character I've written, like brought to life. Like they've leapt off the page and they're punching a Then in the face, and it's perfect. And yeah, it was
like
really
Tom,
really
who was
great.
playing Bryce Grafton. He was one of the first ones that I wrote. I think and it was a very different character to one that Tom normally plays, and he just knocked it out of the park. He was Bryce Grafton. Like, I couldn't have asked for anyone else. Which again would be interesting if we ran it again to see what someone, how someone would take that character.
Yeah. I think the same questionnaire that you did would be interesting, because your job then stops being how do I write a character for this person, and more who would fit this this person's requirements best. Again, I'd be really interested to see how it all played out differently. I'd also be interested to see the whole situation with a different story. So same characters, but a completely different situation. I'm sure someone's already floated the idea of And Now My Watch Begins Nightmare. I think that would be absolutely incredible.
That's something we've been discussing since we started writing this game.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because that would be phenomenal.
That was kind of James's original concept for this game.
Yeah, okay.
I'd be really interested to see the forms everyone filled in as well. How many people gave you a lot to work with, and how many people just gave you the bare bones minimum? Just
I would
hit me with
say the
anything.
majority gave nothing.
Not nothing. I select
Not,
preferences.
but very little.
Yeah.
Like maybe just like I want to be a northerner, and that's it.
That was I think I just said northern small folk who
Yeah.
accidentally did something.
There were a
And I was
few
like,
who
"Oh, I'm not."
gave quite details of what they wanted, and sometimes we were able to recreate that in our own style. Other times we had to be like, that just doesn't work for the game that we're writing, so we're just gonna scrap that and write something better.
Some people put through multiple concepts as well. But what usually ended up happening there was we'd kind of like amalgate them into one, like take aspects from all of them. Yeah, and another thing I liked as well was writing for people who I've role-played with a lot. Because then you know like what beats you can hit that are familiar and comfortable to them, but then also you know kind of where their normal comfort zone ends, and you can push outside of that and just put them into something like a character they would not normally play, which is which was
Like Kitty making you an angry northerner and giving me a boat.
Yeah, literally, it was so funny because my Hoist the Colours character is a northerner with a fiery temper, and when I opened my character sheet, the top descriptions were fiery temper, proud northerner. I was like, she's just put my Hoist the Colours character in the setting of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it was fantastic. It was great.
nice.
Ended up being less angry than my Hoist character, but it was still it was really good. And then again, you were given a boat.
A dodgy smuggler of a boat, just perfect for me.
It was fantastic. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it wasn't just us playing the characters, you guys playing NPCs. Did you write a big backstory for your own personal characters, having to herd us?
I made up the backstory of the Master of Arms as the weekend went.
Yeah.
I was not planning on doing the Master of Arms. I think we decided that on the Saturday morning.
Yeah, it was like 5 minutes to time in. I was like, Sean, you can do it.
Yeah, you got Black Gamby.
Yeah.
Go.
You know the part.
You did an absolutely fantastic job.
Thank you.
We had we had maybe a dozen like directed NPCs.
We had our crew NPCs.
Yeah, they had a few paragraphs of background. I want to give a big shout out to Dave and Matt, who played the clan elders for the Marsh Keepers and the Elk Clan, respectively, because they had very little briefing. Some of the plot decisions we made about the Marsh Keepers, Dave found out like on the fly, which was interesting. But he dealt with it really well. And we knew that it would be in safe hands with him. He's done some amazing like crew roles over the years. Same with Matt Lane as well. He's just a really brilliant role player. Fantastic improv guy as well.
When you've got crew like that who you can give these kind of big sort of talky roles to, where there's going to be a lot of improv because we can't be by their shoulder every step of the way. It's really good to know that you can just give them that role, trust what they'll do with it. Yeah. Even if it's like, they will improv it and then they'll come back to you and say how it went and stuff. But it put a lot of the weight off our shoulders of like that worry that knowing that our characters are in safe hands.
So I've never played with, I think you say Dan was the leader of the Marsh Keepers?
Dave,
not Dave. Yeah, Dave. Never played with him before, but one of a really good moment for me was when we were having lunch. And he was sat in the back of where we were, not at lunch, dinner. He was sat in the back of where we were eating, singing The Last of the Giants. And that was like a really cool, immersive moment for me because it was just like in-world song, sung by a wildling. And also just as he went past, I was just like, wildling, have you ever seen a giant? And then it was like fun to have a conversation around that. Nice. And then Matt Lane, if you listen to our most recent Flying Lead series, he played vampire in that, like the elder vampire.
Yes, I'm very aware of that because I was the one who killed him.
Oh yes, of course. Yes. Oh, brilliant. He was
betrayed the players.
He was one of my highlights of the whole weekend because I had loads of roleplay with him when he was in when he was being the barkeeper.
He's got a real gravitas to him. When he speaks, people shush.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, no, I agree. It was fantastic. All the crew did really good jobs. Did you guys have like a favorite NPC you played? Because I know I accidentally called Pascal a Septon at one point, which you were not. It was dark.
I think I was a ranger at that point.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on."
You look very much like the Septon who swore us in.
It was very funny.
Yeah, I played like 3 characters over the weekend. There was the Septon that I was all of Friday night. Saturday morning, that was good. I really enjoyed leading like the oath right? Because I knew that would be like a big moment, and that felt really powerful when we had the whole like intake of conscripts reciting the oath before the septon, in the light of the seven, in the sight of gods and men, and that was very, very cool. The character himself was mostly like just waffling stuff and trying to relate absolutely everything to the seven who are one in one way or another. But I think my wildling elder was a favorite in leading, especially in leading and guiding the stealth mission, and then desperately convincing the crows to not knock on the door and disturb the wasp nest of thens that were inside, lest we all be swept away in the tide of iron.
That mission went fantastically well. Nothing went wrong.
No, absolutely nothing. Ignore the fact that at one point someone stood up and just yelled, "Run!"
At that point, I legged it all the way back to the fort. There was no going back for me.
Yeah, that turned out to be a real like highlight as well, because heading back, and we're halfway back, and they're like, "Wait, they've got one of us!" Like, not all of us made it back out. I'm like, no, we must have, and then realizing that
poor Egon,
hadn't made it out, and they're like, no, we've got to get him back, and trying to convince them to not get us all killed with death by Then at 11:30 at night, and
imagine,
just really, really good. And we got lucky there with the weather as well, because the moonlight was really bright. So even though it was dead of night,
really was.
We could still see like fairly well, and But at one point on the first step up the hill, I was crouched in a bush with NPC crew like patrolling like 1.5 feet away from me, in front of me, going right past, and I get a call from James, who's at the top of the hill on the radio, saying, "How's everything going down there?" I'm like, shut up. I can't talk right now. Which was
I'm busy.
Hilarious.
You kind of spoke earlier as well. You had the advantage of being in a kind of pre-made world, but you've also kind of spoke. I'd be interested to hear how that helped and how that was a challenge. I don't know if you've written games in like your own setting before, but what was the kind of like challenge of? I know, the challenge of kind of writing in a preset world. You've kind of talked about, looking at family trees and trying to work out who is where and if it all makes sense. But how would you compare that to like writing your own setting or writing characters for your own setting?
I think so. Sometimes the constraints were very frustrating. Sometimes the constraints were very useful as well.
Yeah, I would say sometimes they could be very helpful because it gave us structure. I think the positives definitely outweighed the negatives.
Sure.
But there were certain times in like the writers' meetings where we'd be like, "Oh, why can't we do this?" And it's like, "Oh, because that hasn't happened yet," or that doesn't make sense in the history. There's no reason that person would be at the wall at that time. And,
Kitty and I were definitely the anachronism police, being like, no, this doesn't happen for another like 2 years yet. And it's like, does that really matter? It's like, yes, like if we're doing this, we need to do it right, because there will be a player
someone
who knows
is
more
going
than
to be.
us. Yeah,
exactly. You've always got to think that the players will know more than you about an unknown setting. If it's your own setting, then you can do what you want. You can make up stuff and be like, yeah, it was always like this. You just didn't know that, and this has only just been revealed. Whereas especially in a setting like Song of Ice and Fire, which has the detail down to crazy amounts, like I said, with all the family trees and things, you've got to be very careful to be as close to that setting as possible if you want that level of immersion. Because we did make up quite a few families. Like I mentioned the Cleganes before. The guy playing Ervig Clegane, that's a completely made-up character. It's the Mountain's uncle, basically. Because there isn't actually much about... There's a lot about the Mountain's grandfather, who was just known as Clegane. And then there's nothing about his sons. And then the next thing you find out about is obviously the Hound and the Mountain. And so I decided, because this player wanted to be a Clegane, and I remember discussing with everyone else, like, how are we gonna make this real? And then I just basically deep dived into the history of the Cleganes and found this gap in the family tree, and just wrote what should be in that gap. And I just created these two brothers.
Yeah, so I guess again, it's like kind of finding those gaps within the setting where you could put your own detail. So yeah, I mean, I think it's good, interesting. So it was more benefit, and I also know exactly the feeling you're talking about of Pascal, when you talk about like, I've got this really cool idea for a character concept that I want to do, and then because I do like world building for D&D, and then be like, yeah, that is really cool, but it doesn't make any sense, and I'm really sorry, you can't do it. Because that's sick. You're right. That would be amazing, but you can't do it here. And then the next idea. Oh, what about this? Like, I hate to do it twice in a row, but that also makes no sense in the setting. I'm really sorry. So it's interesting to see you kind of had a similar thing. Was there any surprises from the characters as you went along? Like in the plot, was there anything you did where you're like, oh my God, how are we going to...
No one killed off the plot.
Yeah, how are we going to recover from this? Like, what do we do now? Or
So, Kitty, James, and I used to run with Johnny and a few other writers through the years, a game called Buccaneers of the Damned, which was like the predecessor to Hoist. Mm-hmm. And Buccaneers was completely batshit insane. It was off the wall. It started out as a dark take on
Peter Pan.
And then by the end of it, there were so many like spiraling plot lines, but we used to write up until like Saturday afternoon, evening, play the rest of it by ear, and write the Sunday morning on Saturday night. And we decided for this game we wanted to do roughly kind of take the same approach of like, well, we had everything kind of set in stone up to a certain point, and then it depended on player action.
Yeah, we knew what the Marshkeepers' plans were. We knew what the Elk clan were having going, but we didn't know how the players were going to react to it. The players could either side with one or the other clans. Worst case scenario, the players could just, salt the earth and burn everything down, which some of the players told me in character as my Master of Arms. It's like, why can't we just kill all of these wildlings?
Yeah, there's a very real chance the players just exterminate all the plot NPCs, right?
So why can't we just run them through with Castle Forged Steel?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
I also had to have that conversation with that person.
Just came up all the time. It's like all I'm saying is, we just run them through like dogs. Like, I don't understand why we're still here. What's the point?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was sort of what my Master of Arms was there to reinforce to those bloodthirsty players that, yes, there's only about 5 or 6 villages here at the moment, but there's actually hundreds of them. We're in Marshkeeper territory. Like, this is the main village. There's lots of little villages around here as well, and they will all converge if there's a delicate balance beyond the wall.
When needed, the free folk can be a real endless hordes.
Yeah, exactly.
Me and Morgan were having a chat on the way down. It's like, what happens if all the players just decide to mutiny and become wildlings on the first day?
So then we don't have to write the rest of the weekend. You could just, hang out,
run around.
We'll just crack open the bar and it's like, this is what you want.
Easy, perfect. You'll be on the wall. Enjoy.
Yeah.
I think Tom suggested we all just have a big time out and swap kit. So all the crew get all of our Night's Watch kit, get all the Wildling kit, and then it's
right, crew, you're all Night's Watch for the rest of the weekend.
It's time to run them through with Castle Forged Steel.
Castle Forged Steel. Yeah.
I heard the words Castle Forged Steel an awful lot.
Yeah, I think I know. I think I know
from
directly who
one
was responsible
particular
for that.
character. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I know exactly who was responsible for that.
approaching my Ice Walker clan elder with the. So how do you feel about Castle Forge Steel? Sounds very useful. Thank you. Yeah.
So, did the LARP lives up to your hopes and dreams? Is there anything you would change if you were to rerun it, as you said you're going to potentially going to do?
The thing about running like a new game, for me at least, is just there's a certain level of anxiety like going into it. It's kind of inevitable, right? It's always like, are we running a shit game? Like, have we done enough? But then the players get into it, and it turns out we are really good at this, apparently. And then, yeah, they have a great time.
I think throughout the weekend, there were definitely moments where we were worried. It's like, are people having a good time? Is this fun? Are we doing the right thing? You know, and then we would be second guessing ourselves. But
And then we'd walk past someone, and they'd tap us on the shoulder and just be like, by the way, I'm having the best time I've ever had.
yeah,
Like, okay,
I had quite a few people sort of come up to me, especially in like sort of lull moments where they would just sort of say, "Oh, Sean, this is absolutely amazing." And I'm like, "Cool,
Good, glad, good,
good."
I enjoy.
It's nice to get that feedback, especially during the game as well.
Yeah, I
Puts the
enjoyed.
writers at ease.
I enjoyed seeing a few people there who it was their first time in Eversley. So I know that Oliver and Robin there, who do the 2 Hour to Roll podcast, chat to them. It'd be their first time at Eversley. And I think it's really funny because I remember my first ever Eversley game, and it was actually my first ever non-Empire LARP. And I remember just like, because it's such a different type of game, just being like, oh my God. Like, I've just discovered this amazing hobby, had a fantastic time, and now there's a whole other side to it. And it's really funny seeing people, like seeing them and talking to them about like, this is so different, this is so cool, like I really enjoyed it. And it's really nice seeing people have that kind of first Eversley moment, which is really good, and I really enjoyed it.
I think it worked especially well in... So the first half of the game, essentially, is about forming cliques, right? Finding your people. And so we started that off pretty strong. But then that kind of... Because like a lot of the regular Eversley players, we asked them not to like gravitate towards each other and really where like not to the detriment of their own like game, but engage with people they don't normally roleplay with. Because
try and find people whose characters relate with your character. And you know,
and that's
one of the funniest lines that I heard over the weekend was, "This is the first LARP where I've been excited for someone to tell me about their character's backstory."
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah. We started that off with immediately separating out like the veterans and sworn swords, and then like the northern conscripts and the southern conscripts. And so from the get-go, from like 10 minutes to time in, being like, these are the people that you know. No one else here. And you've only known them for like the 2 weeks it's taken you to walk here. Giving the veterans like time to form like tribes within the different orders and start like ramping up those rivalries. And then like the builder steward rivalry that kind of ran through the weekend. So it was really good dynamic. And the Rangers just kind of being like the jocks of the whole thing. And there was one moment in particular where, because of the whole thing of being a conscript that we wanted to capture was your plunge into this environment where you know literally nobody. Your life is essentially forfeit, and this is that's it, right? That's the rest of your life. And there are people there that you might not agree with, that you need to like forge bonds with through hardship. And there's one example of that where Maz told me about, who was playing Gwynna. So a retired soldier from Bear Island who has spent her entire life like fighting away Ironborn raiders. And then Silas Winch, who is like a pretty well-to-do Ironborn raider who spent his entire life raiding. And they were both conscripted at the same point, and immediately they started bickering. Immediately they had that animosity from like the start of their walk-in. And in the very last fight, Gwenna was on the floor, and the only person near her was Silas Winch. And she was just thinking, like, okay, if he comes over and saves me, I'll live. Otherwise, I'm dying right here. And she just looked him in the eyes, and you could see the decision on his face of being like, do I save her, or do I get rid of this thorn in my side that I'll have to live with for the rest of my days in the Night's Watch? And yeah, just those kind of interactions that run like so deep from that kind of animosity was far exceeded our expectations, I think, as producers, as writers. And I think, like, in terms of expectations, so that's rambled on through several different tangents, but here we are.
It's fine. It's all good.
We love a good tangent.
This podcast is 99% tangent. It's absolutely fine.
Great.
No, but I absolutely agree.
That kind of thing just blew our expectations out of the water.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the whole thing. I had a backstory connection, it wasn't one that was on my sheet. There was like a connection with another character in the game because we had a shared enemy basically in our backstory, and realizing that was a really fun moment. Like having this moment where like, oh my, I think Sean, you were there.
Yes, it was with Gigi's character.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
That was really fun that I was there to see that.
Yeah,
because like that's one of those moments where there's probably loads of those going on that we just missed. But I just happened to be there when the connection was found, and it was just wonderful to see that erupt in front of me.
I was just walking past, I heard her say the guy's name. I just whipped my head round. I was like, what the hell did you just say? Who? It was fantastic. Again, we'll talk about more when we do our rundown. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think you're right. I think that there's only so much you can do. And again, all my experience with game running does come from TTRPGs, but I think there's only so much you can do as like a writer or a game runner, like to put the stuff in place. But you've kind of, the players have got to carry some of that weight. And I think that's when you're doing something like this, right? There's a big pressure on that. It's like, let's hope that the players commit to it and do everything justice. And it's really good to hear that you think they did. And I certainly think they did. I think everyone kind of brought their own interpretation of their characters, really pulled it through. People knew their stuff, and it worked out really well. I again, had an absolutely amazing time.
I felt like a lot of the backstories came up naturally as well. There was no one forcing one down each of his throats or dragging that from another person. They all just came up very naturally as the weekend progressed.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of aiming for.
Is there any other parts of the setting you're tempted to run a game in, or are you fairly committed to
any other setting? Or
any other parts of the setting? So like, rather than just you've done Night's Watch, is there anything else you think it would be fun to run a game in that you'd thought about? Or
I'd love to. So the parts of the setting that really interest me are the politics and the intrigue more than the fighting. Although I'd love, like that said, like I'd play pretty much anything set in Westeros. There is a game in Poland which ran the week before we did called Heirs of the Dragon around the Great Council of Harrenhal, and I was around a campfire at Eversley making plans for that with someone when tickets went live, unfortunately. So I missed out on that one.
Oh no.
But I'd love to go to a future run if they do it again. There's maybe some other things in the works, but I don't want to tease anything about that.
Ooh, sure.
Because it's a different writing team.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
But maybe something around like War in the Riverlands or something like that. It's hard to do anything around the Dance of the Dragons or Aegon's Conquest or anything because we don't have an 80-foot dragon on crew.
Yeah,
I mean, Fred's pretty
that's a
big,
shame.
but he's not quite like
Probably get a wormling, like a brand new baby dragon.
Or like the ones towards the end, but then what's the point?
I was hoping for a mammoth this weekend.
Maybe. We've got some ideas.
I mean, you got a big bear.
Oh, yeah.
That is true. It was a very big bear.
A very big bear. I think he was 7 foot tall in total.
Maybe like, I don't know, maybe do like a battlefield. Like if we took like the German-Polish battle LARP concept
What's that then?
and applied that. So where you have kind of two camps of players. It's more like it's more kind of gamey. But you do have a persistent character throughout the weekend, but you kind of go back, like you have like respawns, or you can get like revived and stuff. But it's just a big like PvP gamey battle, really, rather than like a full on like role playing experience.
I think something that's quite fun that I've done in other games as well. Not to spitball a LARP in the middle of this podcast, but like I think something that would be really interesting and fun to do is having more time jumps and having a kind of like in the months, you've all met before a war, and there's months happen, and then you would go and you see this is the aftermath, and you discuss stuff that's happened. Then it would be really fun as well. Like different ways when you're like, how do we fizz rep this? It's like, well, just don't. We the bits we do with the small scale stuff, and we talk about things that have happened in between.
When we discussed 3 time jumps in the writers' room, was it 3 we did?
2.
Yeah, 1. No, 2.
Yeah. There was a third one at some point, but we cut that.
Yeah,
one.
there was a lot of like, not backlash, but like we're like, we can't do that. It's like the players won't understand. It's like they will.
Yeah.
As long as you
They're not
announce
stupid.
there's a time jump.
Yeah. It also kind of like, it feels like it could be kind of a cheap like narrative device, but I think it worked really well for us.
Yeah.
It also meant like
there was.
if we were going to do the wall, we wanted to do it properly.
Yeah, sure.
Build a 700-foot tower of ice.
Like, we love the palisade, the fort, but it's not a stand-in for like the wall, right?
Yeah.
But one of the ideas we were thinking was like, if we can get just like 70 foot of like garage tent, and then like set dress it and put like dry ice like through it all, and then we're like, that's a lot of work for what is a 20-second bit.
You could do like I reckon you can make it quite effective by doing like making it smaller as it goes to the top. But again, that's a lot of work.
Just have someone holding a photograph of the wall saying, look in the distance, there it is.
Yeah, it's conveniently just over the horizon.
Yeah, all times.
As a dirty non-book reader, I must ask, why no shields?
Why no shields? So
No
the
shields!
reason is, I mean, the aesthetic was the key reason. Because in A Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game, none of the Night's Watch models have shields, and they all look like total badasses, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
They're all like wielding these big double-handed swords, or spears, or they've got their bows.
Or they've got like a sword and a knife, and they're like, and they're really like really dynamic. And seeing that,
none of them are hiding behind a shield.
Yeah,
They are the shield.
exactly.
I loved. We'll talk about this more in the next episode. But I loved Sean, your character, clearly having some shield-related trauma at some point in his life was hysterical. Because every time it came up, you like, stop talking about fucking shield.
Your Monty Python reference is also astounding.
Oh, it's so funny.
But,
So,
there's also a
as the,
practical reason, right? Because not a lot, like in the books, not a lot of them take shields beyond the wall, and in the show as well. Like very few of the Swan brothers have got shields beyond the wall because it's just not practical. If you've got to carry something over like weeks and weeks of marching, you're carrying that on your back. That could be supplies. That could be shelter. That could be so much more. When the enemies you're fighting have got like wooden stone axes and like flint-headed spears. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's something in I believe it's Castle Black called the Shield Hall.
Yeah,
And it's full of noble houses' shields. So a noble would come to the wall. This was like way before, because it's not really in use anymore in the current timeline. But they would come to the wall with their shield, and that shield would get hung up in the Shield Hall. And it would be a sort of way of that person setting aside their family and taking the black.
yeah.
Because in the olden days, noble houses would send off, their kids to serve on the wall as an honourable thing to do.
Position of honor,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed. I do have to admit, you mentioned sword and knife, and that was basically my outlay for this weekend because I had a sword, and then I was like, well, I've got this free hand, and I have a knife. So even if I never use the knife, at least I have it if I need it.
Yeah.
And the benefit
Yeah,
of
a lot of people went ambi this weekend.
Yeah, I've never done ambi. It's
You know
my
what?
first
It
trying
looks sick as hell.
Yeah,
right?
it does. Like having
That was some of the best cinematic combat even I've
Oh.
ever seen at Eversley because of that no shield.
Yeah.
You know, people
No, I
aren't just.
agree.
It's not just two shield walls clashing together and being all, oh, I don't want to step
Yeah.
forward. Whereas there was a shield wall, but it was on the enemy, so it meant that the players had to just really go in and just get really involved in that combat, and just seeing it from an outside perspective as the refs. It was just wonderful to watch.
Yeah, there was a one point that stuck in my mind where there was 4 or 5 players with great swords just going absolutely ham, like in unison on the fens, and that was it. And also that disparity, like you don't have shields, the Thens have shields. The Thens are hard as nails. Like it helped reinforce that. Like these guys are like tough to take down. It's gonna be a lot of work to get through the Thens.
I really enjoyed like I said, a lot of people went ambi, and again, my knife came up surprisingly more frequently than I wanted because the minute you're in close quarters, I'm just like stabbing with my knife, which was really good fun. And it was. I think you made the point. So we did almost like a little obituary thing on the Discord of like everyone's like how their character died or what they did afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, it's been great reading those.
And I love Sean. I think it was in your thing, Sean, when you looked around and no one had picked up a shield.
Exactly, yeah. Even in death, the Master at Arms was proud that these green recruits who had wanted to hide behind their shields like their mama's skirts had become true warriors. You know, they were the shield. And the Master of Arms could die happy knowing that he'd done his job well.
I think it was the stewards that were the shields more than anything at their death rate.
No, they were just like, just throw the stewards in the way.
Can we take a minute to talk about the epilogues that people have written up?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's great. I've never seen anything like that on this kind of scale for a one-shot game. Like, kind of where are they now? And the answer is dead a lot of the time. There was 2 that were posted in quick succession. One of them was Max Kingdom, who was playing...
Lannister?
No.
Was he Lannister?
He was Harwin, the like veteran.
Oh, Harwin Blackwood.
Oh,
Yeah.
And his was like really emotive, and like that wasn't a character that I'd written, but reading it through and reading all of like how he kind of processed, like his character was an alcoholic, and then reading that through to the end, that was really emotive and like nearly kind of brought me to tears. And then I read Sean Langford's, who played Tybalt Lannister of Lannisport, and I wrote his character, and I know like all the intricate details. So that's a character I'm super proud of. And there's a lot of like queer trauma in there, and there's a lot in that text, the character's text, that he didn't like bring out in game, that he didn't like speak about to anyone. But reading through the epilogue, it was clear that was all running through his character's mind the whole time. And like there's a name that just springs up a few times in that epilogue, and like the way that he finished it off, I was weeping. I fully like breaking down in tears for like 20 minutes after reading that. It was really like I put up a thing on the Discord as well of being like, I'm gonna write Sean like this really traumatic like queer story. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna make him cry, and then
Uno reverse card.
Hitting me with the Uno reverse card, exactly. Yeah. So that was great. It's really fantastic to see the love that people have poured into these characters.
Yeah. I was very happy in a macabre way to see how many players actually chose to die in this setting. It really felt realistic at the end. Not just everyone goes and survives and goes back home to the wall to range again. There was a lot of deaths there.
40% mortality rate, I think, by the end.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, half of that was done player on player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was. They are fantastic. Because I wrote the first one, and mine's like really short now in comparison to a bunch of other people's.
Yeah.
So I'm tempted to go back and do it again.
Probably should write one.
You should. They're really good to read through as well.
Bethany didn't even die, and I think she's on her third.
Beth just keeps churning it. I think
she's like fully turned into this is now my fan fiction.
Yeah, no,
this is my hobby. Like Kyra Byrne is. This is the life and times of Kyra Byrne.
Yeah, she's got a Song of Ice and Fire brain rot. Like it's just stuck very firmly in there.
Also, she was one of the characters I wrote, and she did a fantastic job. Of portraying like the steely school mistress that I wrote her as. I also think
I don't know if you know. It's really funny because every character I've ever played with Beth, she's always just been very light and happy and funny. And then like to see her character, she's talking about her character like I've got to be severe.
She messaged me before probably like early December, saying like, "Oh, this isn't the kind of character I normally play." And I was like, well, do you want to play it? You know, I can always write you something else if you really don't. And she's like, no, I want to push my comfort zone.
I think she did a fantastic job at being severe.
We had a lot of back and forth, like private messaging. Like she was asking about the character, and she wanted to really sort of do a good job with it. My biggest regret of the weekend is I just didn't get to see that story because of, her betrayal. Well, not betrayal, but like someone had framed her.
There were some great shots of her chewing them out.
Yeah, I missed all of that because I was reffing a different encounter at the time.
I wish I could have just like hovered around like
I just wanted to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't want to work. I wanted to watch all of my little people like they were my, the television show that I binge on. I want to know what my favorite characters are doing.
It was, I can imagine actually. And again, there were so many fantastic stories that hopefully we'll pull a few out when we record our kind of recap. And it's fun to see. I suppose you can see through all the fiction that people are writing, like what people did with them.
Yeah. Well, that's why we really love reading these like epilogues and like highlights of their weekend and stories. So, yeah, if you're listening, please keep doing it because we love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're listening and you didn't get a chance to go, if there's it might not be a Song of Ice and Fire, but if there's ever another Feast Your Eyes event, absolutely jump straight on it because it was absolutely fantastic.
So, Feast Your Eyes is like a framework for Kitty and Johnny to put on their own games outside of the ILARP like series, if that makes sense. So
it's usually like niche ideas that others have sort of come to them and said, I've got this idea to do, like things like Forlorn Hope and Redacted and things like that.
Oh, I'm so good. I miss Redacted. Redacted looked amazing.
It was immense. It was a one of a kind.
Don't tell me that, Pascal. Bloody
unfortunately,
hell.
a lot of the Feast Your Eyes games are just one of a kind.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to trying crewing Forlorn Hope in a couple of weeks.
LARP too.
LARP.
But yeah, I think
I'm
unfortunately also at something else. But is there any closing thoughts you want? Anything you wanted to round off before I think we leave it off? Is there anything you wanted to say about the event or any last thoughts before we close out for the episode?
I had a few people message me about like, what can I write about my character now? It's like, well, there might be another one like of that character in the future. We gave you the starting point, but for now, that character's yours.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, again, just like the love people have poured into it, and really, the more like we see coming out of it, the more I think we were absolutely justified in putting the work in.
Do you think you'd ever run another LARP with pre-made characters then?
Yeah, the same characters. Yeah. Not.
Oh no, a different setting with a. Fair enough.
Maybe. If we do another Song of Ice and Fire game, I think we would pre-write the characters again.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it does take a lot of work, but the payoff definitely is there. But you need thankfully we had a good writing team where all four of us were very comfortable in creative writing, and And you can actually see the different styles as well of each of the writers, which was quite nice.
We're also all very comfortable in giving and receiving critical feedback.
Well, that's a must.
Yeah, none of the characters went out like, I would write something and then it just gets sent out. Every character gets put up. We then all read it, and then we had on the Excel sheet, we would tick green or feedback.
I'm just going to share it with you briefly. Yeah. So here we have like all of the player name and like the character details imported from the form, and we claim them. And then there's a link to the Google Doc with the sheet, and this is how the sausage is made. And then here is the big feedback matrix. And so there's options on all of these, like yes, no, or feedback sent, and then
Listeners, you can't see this, but this is a truly terrifying level of work.
Yeah, when we first started it, and like all of those green things were just, I think they were yellow beforehand.
Right.
It was such a daunting task to start with, but like little by little, they would just start getting ticked green.
Yeah.
And it all just started coming together.
It's so satisfying to look at now.
You did a fantastic job. Loved every moment of this game.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any closing thoughts from you, Sean?
No, like I said, this was my first time on a LARP writing team, and it has just been an absolute pleasure, really, to work with such award-winning writers like Pascal and Kitty. And obviously James as well, but I don't think he's won an award.
Yet.
Award-winning and not award-winning.
Yeah.
Well,
let's see how it does.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you very much for an amazing weekend. It was really, really good.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thanks
for
making it good.
Thanks for having us on the podcast.
Yeah, no
Absolute
worries.
pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening. As I've kind of mentioned a couple of times, we are going to be doing a coverage of our time at the event, which should be coming out soon, but I'm not going to say any dates. And then there's a few other LARPs coming up that we'll be talking about soon as LARP season fully swings in. But it's good to be back, isn't it, Tom?
Oh, it's lovely to be back. We've dusted off the mics. We've even got some new mic stands.
Yeah,
no longer being held together with duct tape and shoelaces.
For anyone looking at we had a I can't remember where we posted it. We posted a picture of we were recording an episode, and we literally had to wait the other side of the microphone stand with my boot. Because they'd broken and it was wrapped up with tape, and it was like, wow, we need to get some more next year. But yeah, we've got new equipment now, so
well, Patreon money does help.
Yeah, so thank you very much, everybody. But yes, thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and you'll hear from us soon. But for now, goodbye.
All the best. Thank you.
Right. Cheers. Thank you, guys.